A man who's always had a lot of thoughts, but never a lot of prayers. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice with you on a mandate. You get it on. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. I love that about you, right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
And Bryan.
Suck on some beef.
So we're going to talk to Dr. Marc Zimmerman, who's a PhD, and he's going to approach this whole gun violence, school shooting craziness from a little more of a psychological standpoint. And that's his background, at least as I know. And then we'll talk to Marisa Randazzo, who's also a PhD, but she'll talk about it more of a threat, physical, hardening of targets. I think she was I'll look down her thing here, but she's got quite a resume. And she was a Secret Service agent and all that. So we'll discuss the psychological part of it, and we'll discuss the sort of practical, physical part of what we can do with these school shootings and grocery stores and beyond in this country. Which is
soft targets, I believe you've referred to them as, and they're referred to as, right?
Yeah, my feeling is there's an aspect of this that has to do with gun control. There's an aspect of this that has to do with where are the parents, where are the psychologists, where
who's
are the counselors, who's intervening, no one's ever going to see it before the parents see it. So to me,
ostensibly,
this is a breakdown of the family unit. And there's a strong psychological component, there's a strong familial component, and then there's this practical component to it, which is, we reinforce the cockpit doors of commercial airliners because somebody went through those cockpit doors.
Right. And I was also thinking, dangerous and dumb people who that often intersects make it so much easier, I would think, for authorities to catch them because they're always posting about shit.
Yes.
And this kid posted about shit. So how do we get that alert? How do we tighten up that alert?
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to do that. And we're also going to have to talk about the parents a little bit here. I used to say to Dr. Drew all the time back when his triplets were 2 years old, because I after doing Loveline for as long as I did Loveline, I was like, I think most of this stuff can be traced back to the home. And, but, a lot of the homeless stuff we're talking about, most of the problems, there's school shootings, then there's homelessness, then there's inner city gang shootings, but we could all go back to the home and go, what the fuck's going on with the parents here? Why is your kid sleeping on the street, or why is he running around at 4 a.m. in Chicago with a pistol and he's 15, or why is he living at home with you and yet putting together an arsenal and putting on, flak jackets and posting stuff on the internet.
And by the way, hard not to notice this kid because the New York Post reports that he was cutting up his face with knives for fun. So maybe at the breakfast table you'd notice something a little different?
Yeah. And the problem is I don't think there's a breakfast table. And that's the problem. I mean, the guy shot his grandma before he left. The guy shot up the supermarket in Buffalo. I think he shot his mom before he left. I mean, there's a lot of breakdown in the family unit. And what I used to say to Drew is like, look, if your kids were just everyone's kids, your triplets, then we could all sleep with our doors unlocked at night, and we could all throw our backpacks on the passenger seat of our cars, whatever neighborhood we're in, and leave.
Poor Chris.
We don't have to. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff if the parents are doing the parenting. So
on that note,
yes.
I came across an interesting article today, retweeted by friend of the show, guest of the show, conservative pundit Matt Lewis. He retweeted a really interesting article. I read the whole thing, and I don't know if Ben has it. I sent it to him earlier, but it's about the author. I didn't look into who the author was. I just found it interesting. The author is like, we need to have and enforce red flag laws, like what you're talking about, which is this, and he had an interesting chart in the article. Which
David French.
Oh, there you go.
So says Chris.
In every one of these school shootings, there have been red flags. Like literally, people have reported like, hey, this guy's acting weird. This guy or that guy's been 5150'd or whatever for a day or two and then released, or questioned and then released. There should be red flags. I'm interested to talk to our experts about this because it sounds great to me. How do we put this into practice? But like, if there's something going on, whether it's the parents or the friends or the teachers or whoever notices it, put that on the, have that red flag go up.
I'm glad you said that because I think when a lot of everyone says there has to be some sort of mandate, laws, policies, everyone just assumes everyone wants to take their guns away. That this is not that.
No.
There's so many other options, and hopefully our guests can help us with that.
Well, part of the problem, as I'm thinking back, is we have a set of laws and we've constructed a society that when the North Hollywood bank robbers were pulled over, I think in Eagle Rock, California, before the bank robbery, they popped the trunk, and in the trunk was a bunch of automatic weapons, AR-15s, banana clips.
Y'all drive safe now.
Flak jackets, and police scanners with like zip ties and duct tape. And they went, well,
not technically legal.
They hadn't robbed anything yet. And they literally put them both in for a few months. And when they got out, they gave them back their shit.
I don't get it.
That was another article I read. I've been reading a lot about this, obviously, and someone pointed out, like, there's a lot of good and legitimate and legal reasons why people want guns and ammo, and they should be able to buy them. There's not a lot of good and legitimate and legal reasons to buy and own body armor.
Yes, that's something we were talking about last week.
It's really hard to get body armor.
Then again, if it's open carry, Wild Wild West in Texas, I'm going to buy body armor to walk around.
Well, now you can wear it.
Yeah, sweet.
Dr. Marc Zimmerman is ready. I don't know if he's zooming in or we're just going to boot him up. Oh, there he is. Dr. Marc, can you hear us okay?
I certainly can.
From the Institute of Firearm Injury Prevention. So that sounds like a good institute and a good guy to speak to, especially at this chapter in this country. Thanks for joining us. So give us your qualifications and then your takes on some remedies, perhaps.
The qualifications, I'm a professor in the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan, also in psychology in our combined program in education and psychology. I've been studying youth violence prevention for the better part of 30 years. And most recently, you can't study that work without kind of getting into the issues around interpersonal violence around firearms. And so recently, we were funded by the National Institutes of Health to study youth and firearms and created a national consortium to talk about some of these issues, everything from policies, as what you were talking about just now, to specific behavior change strategies. And then that morphed into what the University of Michigan now has invested into this larger institute.
So what are some of the conclusions you've drawn?
Well, it's really complex. I mean, mass shootings account for about 1% of all firearm-related deaths in the United States. Yet when the mass shootings occur, they certainly raise our consciousness. So I do want to point out that about 8 children die every day. 8 children under the age of 18 die every day from a firearm. And that may be from homicide, suicide, or in some cases, unintentional killing. So while these are horrific and we have them too often, they are surprisingly not the most important or focused problem. Having said that, we have to do something about it. We have to think creatively. We have to think across the spectrum from individual behavior to policies, as you were talking about earlier. Most of the mass shootings in schools are male. Most are handguns. Most of the children who commit the crime are either a student in the school or an alumni of that school. And most got that handgun from and by most, I mean like close to 75%, got that handgun from home or the home of a relative. And so that points to all sorts of things that we can do for prevention. And that's some of the work that we're trying to focus on in the Institute.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, we're interesting in that we're sort of wired. So you say, 1% or less than 1% are from mass shootings. And we're and meanwhile, people are just getting shot in Chicago all day, every day. And
Exactly.
look, a kid's a kid. You know, you can do it all at once in a horrific way and kill 19 of them, or you can just have a Labor Day weekend where 19 kids get shot, you know, in a few big cities across the country. And practically, it's kind of like if you heard about 30 people drowning because a boat turned over in the bay, you go, oh, but if one person was killed by a shark, we'd be horrified. Like, we're like, oh, we got to snap into action. We got to put nets up. Like, this is nuts. And
Amity Island.
yeah, we're wired that way as human beings to kind of look the other way for many of the killings that just take place that are almost sadly routine nationally on a weekly and daily basis. And then something grabs our consciousness and everyone snaps into action, or at least attempts to snap into action. But yeah, I'd like to address the school shootings, but I'd like to also address just the rando 15-year-old. There was I don't know if you guys saw this, and Chris, you can probably find it, but there was a thing in Chicago where a culinary student was just coming home from a night out in a decent part of town, and some guy wanted his cell phone, and they kind of wrestled. And at some point, he took the cell phone, and the guy was just laying on the ground. And he just kept shooting him while he just laid there. And it's not a school shooting, and it doesn't really grab the national headlines. But that person is every bit as scary as the school shooter to me, as long as they're at large.
Well, absolutely. And again, I don't want to minimize the school shooting or any school shooting. 6% of kids say they carried a weapon in school. If the average school, it has 500 students, and which it does in the United States, the average high school, that's 30 times that somebody is bringing a firearm to school, whether it's mass or an individual shooting because they were disrespected. The other thing that's, I think, really important to point out is most mass shootings are not in schools. So on the one hand, everyone's concerned, and there's all of this trauma that occurs that we often don't talk about, of like, what now? The families of the lost children or teacher, of course, are majorly affected by that. But the whole school community is affected by it. The whole community where the school's located is affected by it, and we're affected by it. We're talking about it. We're concerned about it. I was talking to colleagues today about, they're worried about their children going to school up here in Michigan. So it gets into the psyche of all of us. And so one focus, and we know that 40%, and there is no real profile for mass shooters, but 40% have either have childhood trauma or have been exposed to violence in some way in their community or in their families. And so all of these children now are at greater risk for becoming themselves mass shooters because of this trauma that they have experienced. So we have to have trauma-informed educational context, and we have to think about what does it mean to be exposed in this way in terms of the modeling of the behavior, or learning that this is a way to solve problems, or losing sleep, becoming less interested in school and less interested in all sorts of activities in normal life because you have experienced this trauma. It's PTSD on steroids, and it stands longer and it stays longer with us. So one focus on prevention is thinking about trauma-informed actions, paying attention to the kids who are in that school who may have experienced either trauma in their school or in their families or in their communities.
Yeah, lots of trauma, and the trauma is sort of like molestation. At some point, you're a victim, and then at some point, you may become a victimizer. So it's sort of the gift that keeps giving. And we're always trying to figure out a sort of mechanical approach to it, like less guns or availability of guns, or it's mechanical stuff, reinforcing the school doors or having a security guard. And I'm not going to argue against a lot of that, but as long as we're producing people that think this is a good idea or who are inclined to do this, it shall continue. There's just not enough security guards or gun regulations we can put into place to prevent it from happening. We might cut into it some percentage, but I really want to look at the root problem. And then you get into this legislation thing where how do you legislate raising your kids or not, trauma or not traumatizing, or what's the definition of trauma, and so on and so forth. Is there any approach that has been effective that we could do as a legislator, societal approach?
Well, I mean, just to comment on the idea that there isn't any one solution. I can't tell you how often I speak to people about this just in my everyday life, and everybody thinks they have the answer. And the problem is so much more complex. And as a society, we haven't done the research that we need to do. We were able to reduce car crashes by 70%, car crash-related deaths by 70% over the last 50 years, because we spent billions of dollars coming up with better, safer cars. We came up with seatbelts. We changed our culture. I don't know if you're old enough to remember when seatbelt laws first went into place and everybody was fighting them and gets into our freedoms and cuts our freedoms off. And now nobody gets into a car that's buckling their seatbelt before they do anything. So it is possible, but I think it takes that kind of commitment. So, what we're trying to do in the Institute is do the kind of research that we need to do to get those kind of evidence-based, to find out what are programs that might be tailored for certain populations or in certain contexts. Most of the firearm deaths in our country are suicide-related, and most of those occur in rural areas. That's a very different kind of intervention than we might do, or a program that we might do in an inner city. African-American kids are 15 times more likely to die from homicide than a white kid. We do something different for that population that we have to think about. Now, directly answering your question, some of the work that we've done, we do have some evidence that in communities, especially urban communities that have been disinvested, that have lots of vacancy, empty lots, illegal dumping, half burned out houses. I mean, there are cities I've worked in and gone to where I've seen you go down a street and there, instead of 10 houses, there's 3 occupied houses, 5 unoccupied and half falling apart, and several empty lots that are overgrown. And so that sort of sends a message that nobody cares about this place, and this is an easy place to do bad things. And so drug cultures may occur, other kinds of nefarious activities that then increase the risk for firearm violence to occur. Those one-offs, that not the mass shootings, but where there is a murder or a gang fight, for example. So what we've done is we work with some local partners in Youngstown and in Flint, Michigan, Youngstown, Ohio, and Camden, New Jersey, where we're looking at what happens if you mow them? Instead of a broken window where one broken window leads to another and leads to the downward spiral of a community, what happens if you build it? What happens if you show that people are paying attention, boarding up houses in ways that you can't necessarily tell that it's boarded up? And so instead of a plywood board on the outside, you put it on the inside and you paint it. Mowing the lawn, planting a garden, doing really simple things we have found that actually reduces violence and reduces firearm violence in particular in those neighborhoods where those kind of activities are happening. Low cost, and it's something that we can do starting tomorrow, and that many communities around the country are doing. We also have an after-school program where we engage kids as part of the solution instead of the focus of the problem. So instead of blaming them and trying to change them, we create opportunities for them to develop leadership skills, to develop community change and community improvement projects. And they have planted gardens, painted murals. In Flint, one of the murals that they've painted is standing for the last 20 years and has not been painted over or graffitiized in any way. And then we study around those places where they've done that work, those kids have done that work. And around those places, crime goes down, violent crime goes down. We also studied and compared the kids who are in that program versus the kids who are not in the program. And we find that those kids who are in the program are less likely to engage in delinquent behavior and violent behavior and much more likely to be engaged in school. So there are things we can do that are not expensive, that we have to start kind of building community again and get away from this idea that it's us against them. It's us, and this is, our nation, our communities, and we need to work together to make it happen.
No, those are very interesting points, and I completely agree. And as you were speaking about the vacant lot and this sort of urban decay and all that, and very simple things, I think we want to go for high-tech solutions or very expensive, sweeping mechanical things. But you're right. The real change, much like I always say, anyone who you run into, you haven't seen them in a year and they drop 40 pounds, you go, what happened? What'd you do? And they go, stop drinking soda. And you go, that doesn't sound sexy. And they go, yeah, I just started walking.
But what about cool sculpting?
Just walking more, and I stopped drinking Mr. Pibb. And it's like, that doesn't sound innovative or fun or interesting or like a life hack. And it's like, no, it's just real basic shit. Sort of like, as you were speaking about that, I was thinking about like school uniforms. I don't have the data in front of me, but when they put kids in school uniforms, they tend to fight less and act out less because psychologically they're in the uniform of their school. Or maybe it's simply that they paid $30 for it. They don't want to tear the sleeve by getting into a brawl on campus. But there's been studies that the school uniform cuts down on the violence and some of the negative interactions and stuff like that. And I think, it's just a basic sort of human thing. If you're living in this sort of hellscape and it looks like, first off, it just looks like you're not being policed. You've been left alone. Nobody. This is a damnation alley you live on for a street. No one is. There's no presence.
Right.
There's no presence here. Then why not do what I want to do?
Very welcoming for that.
And I agree. I'm curious. We just decided to send $40 billion to Ukraine. We can't carve out, and what you're talking about with getting out the weed whacker and putting the plywood on the inside of the window, this is pretty basic, cheap, make a run to Home Depot kind of stuff, not Tomahawk and Stinger missile, Raytheon kind of money. Why doesn't there seem to be sort of a political motivation for this?
Wow. That now you're... I don't know the answer to that. I don't have a really good answer to that. I think part of it's on the researchers. We don't disseminate our information in ways that, in ways like this, where we're talking to normal people and other eggheads who are researchers. I'm among them, not data nerds, but doing some cost-benefit analysis and showing this to be the case. And I think at a local level, that's happening more and more. I think. When communities start doing this in their neighborhood and they connect with the police and the police start helping them by patrolling more often and they're cleaning the place up and they're showing this whole idea that, like you said, why not do that? It becomes a place like, I better not do it here. What's interesting is when we've looked at the data, they're not just, people might say, they're just going somewhere else. They're not. We're not finding that it's necessarily going up in other places, meaning violent crime and gun crime. So I think there are things we can do, and certainly researchers can do a better job communicating what it is. Part of the problem is everybody thinks, I think when it comes around guns, that it's all about gun control, and it's like, you can't take my gun away, and as Charlton Heston said, over my cold dead fingers or something, but it's not what it's about. I think we can all get behind the idea that we need to reduce firearm death in America. I don't know that. I hope there isn't anybody in the United States who believes that we should increase that. And I think what we're trying to do in the Institute is develop the research, the rigorous research that we can defend methodologically. That's good science, that's showing that what is effective and what isn't effective, instead of just sitting around and saying, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this. For example, whether or not you agree with a semi-automatic or automatic weapons ban, and we don't have to go into whether you agree with that or not, that wouldn't have stopped today's or yesterday's shooting. As far as I know, as far as I've heard, there was not a semi-automatic weapon used in that case. So there's no panacea. That's the point. That's a really important point. There's no panacea, no quick fix. You talked about ERPO laws earlier, the extreme risk protection laws, the red flag laws. We don't really know much about how they work. We do know about 23 or so states have such laws. They're really different. And we don't know if one kind works better than another kind. We don't know how they're implemented at the local level. We need to do that kind of research. We need to commit ourselves as a nation that we will invest in solutions and studying the evidence-based solutions. Just like you wouldn't take a drug just because somebody said this is a good idea. We have to invest, like we do at NIH, at the National Institutes of Health, to really cure cancer. It's a moon effort, and that's what it's going to take here. Because again, it's really different. It manifests itself in different ways. The shooting in Buffalo was racism. Underlying racism is pretty clear. What about the one that happened in Texas? Not so much necessarily. We don't know much about that one yet. But so there's different motivations, different issues that occur, and we really have to, I think, get to the bottom of it. If I could take one more minute and just make sure that for our schools, we need to really pay attention to our school climates. And there are efforts at the national level. The Department of Justice has programs and funding that schools can go get to and work with a National Center for School Safety and develop strategies that help create the school climates that are most supportive for kids.
I appreciate your insights, Dr. Marc Zimmerman. You can check out the Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention. That's his institute. And interesting. I've never thought about the sort of broken window thing. And I often think, if you go to a place that's a mess and you're thinking about littering, it's so much easier to flick a cigarette butt or throw when there's litter all over the street. You go into a pristine boardwalk or neighborhood or whatever.
You put that cigarette butt in your pocket.
You will put it. Yes, you will. Like that's just who you are. And I definitely see that psychology as it pertains to these inner cities. So very insightful, very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Marc.
Yeah, thank you. We call that busy streets theory, by the way. If you build it, they will come. If you clean it up, they will not throw their cigarette butts and not getting engaged in those behaviors. But thank you for having me and for the conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Marc Zimmerman. All right, I think we'll take a break. I'll do a quick spot, and then we'll talk to Marisa Randazzo, who's probably coming at it from a slightly more law and order or mechanical approach, which is good. We'll get both sides of the story here. First, I'll tell you about BetterHelp. Oh, boy, never a better time for BetterHelp. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Timely.
Yeah, many people are burnt out. They don't even know it, and it's not just work. Maybe it's the roles, and many of the things you do in life can burn you out. BetterHelp wants to remind you to prioritize yourself. Talk with someone to figure out what's causing the stress in your life. BetterHelp, customized online therapy offering video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. More affordable than in-person therapy, and you can get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. It's time to take care of your head, everybody, so you can take care of the rest of your life and people in it as well. It's BetterHelp, right, Dawson?
Adam Carolla Show listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/Carolla. That's BetterHelp.com/CAROLLA.
All right. We'll be back with another expert in this field, Dr. Marisa Randazzo, PhD, I should say, right after this.
It's time to check Adam's voicemail.
Adam, came up with something new and old, one of those things. Docking. Originally, docking meant you're pulling your boat up to the parking space and you're going to dock. Now, it is the act of putting one's head of their penis inside the foreskin of another penis. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
You can leave us a message at 888-634-1744.
I thought he was going to talk about docking your iPad.
Yeah.
or something.
USB.
I think that's exactly where I thought it was going.
Well, it must be nice to have such pristine minds. Dr. Marisa Randazzo, PhD, is with us. Let me read some of her bona fides. She is, as I said, and jump in, Doctor, if I screw any of this up, 10 years, U.S. Secret Service, the agency's chief research psychiatrist, or psychologist, I should say, co-director of the Safe School Initiative, a federal study of school shootings, and many, many other accolades. So thanks for joining us on short notice.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me add one more. I'm currently the executive director of threat management for Ontic Technologies.
There you go. I'll write that down. So with all your vast experience, what can you tell us about what happened in Texas?
So it's an active investigation. There's still so much that we don't know. Let me tell you what we do know about school shootings generally, and where this one is similar so far and where it's different. So I have been studying school shootings since the Columbine shooting in 1999. And actually, we started a study then that went back 25 years earlier, was part of a group at the Secret Service, and they've continued that research. And there's some findings that we see time and time again about school shootings in the U.S. First and foremost, these people don't just snap. They're not impulsive. They're planned out in advance. Finding shootings that have occurred is that there's often a trail of this planning behavior. People know the shooter has shared these ideas and plans with people around them. I think we just saw information coming out today that the Uvalde shooter had been in daily contact for at least a week or two with a girl in Germany, and ended up texting her what he was about to do before he did it. But we often see this planning behavior go on for days, weeks, months, and in some cases years. That may sound scary. From a prevention angle, it actually is good news. It means we stand a chance at uncovering someone's plans before they do harm. The other big piece that we know, and I just mentioned this, but I want to highlight it, is that prior to shootings like this, the shooter typically tells other people what they're going to do. So there's information out there. Now, the key is the people that they usually tell are peers, they're other kids. So one of the big things we know from dissecting so many of these horrific events is that students are probably our most powerful prevention tool out there, because they are going to know before an adult in school or in the community ever does, and may never do, but students will know. And so part of what we've seen work in the past couple of years is students coming forward when they see something troublesome on Instagram or TikTok or wherever it is, and telling someone, hey, this may be nothing, but I'm not sure. I'm worried. Someone else take a look at it.
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's sort of, I always think about sort of patching a leak in the hull of a boat. You can't really do it from the inside. You got to go outside and do it. Otherwise, it's just really not going to be effective. And there's just in a sense, nobody knows better than a sibling, a family member, or a peer for sure. If somebody who's going to do something, and like you said, it's days, it's weeks, it's months. I don't know what the average, it's years. I don't know what the average time is, but it's enough time for somebody to see something and say something.
Well, we had the See Something, Say Something campaign for airplanes, airports, right? Was that what it was?
There's like a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly. And so would this not be something we could implement, like the same way we told kids to stop, drop, and roll for my entire childhood?
Great analogies. And here's what I'd love. I'd love to see a TikTok challenge where kids come up with quick sayings that apply to a situation like this. So, hey, let's, forget eating Tide Pods and spraying deodorant on your arms. I want to see a challenge where we have students search their creativity, come up with a stop, drop, and roll for this generation about what they can do to share, when they hear about a threat, when they're worried about what a friend's telling them. They don't have to know if the friend is serious or not, but they have to bring it to someone who can do something about it.
Well, then you get into a logistics thing, and it's, going back to terrorists and 9/11. Somebody at the flight training school in Florida was saying, hey, these guys want to learn how to take off, but they don't want to learn how to land. And the FBI was like, thank you for your information. Or some version of that. You hear about that, unfortunately, time and time again. So how do you physically implement this? Like, do we have enough humans to do this?
We do, but here's where we need the force multiplier, because we saw the same thing you were just talking about in the Buffalo shooting less than 2 weeks ago, that federal law enforcement simply doesn't have the capacity to handle this. And who needs training on how to investigate threats is local law enforcement. They often don't get it. They get a lot of training on how to respond to an active shooter. They get training on how to investigate crimes in their community, but they don't get good training on what's called threat assessment, which is the field that I've been in for 28 years. And the Secret Service really helped to define this field. But local law enforcement, local police departments, sheriff's offices don't often get this training. So a big missing piece, if we're going to patch this boat, as you're talking about, is to get training to local law enforcement. If legislators can take any action right now, that's one of the first things they could do that could really help.
Speaking of legislation, gun control, gun regulations, things of that nature, where's your head on that one?
So I'll tell you, I was thinking back the other day. I somehow can't remember how this even came about, but I was thinking back. I did a report in 7th grade, which was back in like the 1800s at this point. But I did a report in 7th grade on gun control. And I will tell you that the issues that we're hearing debated today were similar to what I did, my 7th grade research paper on. I as much as gun control may be appealing from a legislative standpoint, I think we need much more practical solutions. So here's what does work. A number of states have passed things called extreme risk protection orders, or ERPOs. I think 19 states, maybe 23 states have them now. This is a temporary protection order that separates a dangerous person from their guns until they are stable again.
The red flag
until they
laws,
can
we were
be
talking
trusted
about
with
that
those
a
weapons
little
again.
bit
Red
earlier.
flag laws, absolutely. Those work, but we need them in all 50 states. So state legislatures could take some action now to pass ERPO laws in their states that don't yet have them. Those work and work really well.
What about the physical, literally hardening of the schools? Do you have any thoughts about that?
So this has been a constant debate since Columbine, if not earlier, that hardening the target often doesn't work because of situations where the vast majority of school shooters come from within the schools themselves. So they already know the schools. They know the lockdown drills. They know the active shooter drills. They know where people are going to convene. Some school shootings we've seen have actually factored that into their planning. So hardening the target can make people feel good, but from a practical matter isn't going to do enough, I think. But things that do help, that I've seen help tremendously, are school resource officers in schools, especially where there's some good thought given to the actual officers that serve in those positions. We've seen a whole host of averted school shootings that didn't happen because someone confided in a school resource officer. They didn't feel like they could trust the principal. They didn't want to bring it to a teacher. They didn't know how the school personnel would react, but they knew that school resource officer that was in their building every day or patrolling their grounds a couple of times a week, and they trusted that person to bring it forward. So school resource officers can be helpful not only from a deterrent standpoint, but also as a trusted individual inside the school walls that students may be more inclined to talk to rather than someone who could discipline them or grade them.
I have a thought about that. I'm just wondering what you think. When this subject is discussed, it's often not discussed with the nuance that you're bringing to it and the other things we can do. It's usually people assume that everybody wants their guns taken away, or we should do an arms race and arm all the teachers and arm everybody. Do you have thoughts on that kind of black and white thinking?
It doesn't help this at all. I'm glad you raised that because it doesn't help this debate. Unfortunately, this is a problem that we have seen has continued, if not increased, in our country. So a black and white approach to any of this doesn't work. But here's a couple of things I want people to understand that help, because the nuance here is important. The vast majority of people who carry out these shootings in schools especially do so where they're at a point of being suicidal. They have lost hope. They don't care what happens to them anymore. We already have tools within our communities, in our laws, and in our medical and mental health care system to help someone who's at that point of desperation. So we already have tools that we could repurpose here to help someone who is feeling that point of desperation. I want to be clear, not everyone who's suicidal is going to be harmful to someone else. They're not at a risk to other people, but there are a subset of cases where people are thinking, my life is miserable. I don't care what happens to me anymore. I'm going to kill myself. I might as well exact some revenge at the same time, or get some notoriety on my way out, become famous. That's often a secondary motive. But the primary motive is that these are people who have problems that they feel they can't cope with anymore. They feel overwhelmed. Now, ironically, we have threat assessment teams in schools. The adults can take a look at it and say, oh, we can help solve this and this. We can postpone that. They're problems that actually are quite solvable, but from the would-be shooter's perspective, feel overwhelming, and they just feel like, I'm giving up and I don't care what happens to me anymore, or I want to kill myself and I'm going to do it in a very public way and take others out with me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I thought about this similar scenario when the idea of arming the teachers came up, and I was like, the vast majority, it turns out, of the school shooters, public shooters, mass shooters, they end up dead anyway. You know what I mean? So as a deterrent, a person with a gun is not much of a deterrent. Like, I'm going to get shot or killed, big deal.
I think that's just trying to lessen the body count. I think they're trying to shoot them before they shoot the rest of the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Adam, let me add this. Law enforcement has to go qualify with their firearms every month to be able to
I'm not supporting
to use them. I don't think a teacher's
I'm not supportive of that notion. I'm just saying I think that the plan behind it is that. But that being said, if somebody was former law enforcement or military or had the credentials in their background, someone like you, and you were my, kid's biology teacher, and you did go through the recertification yearly thing, I would feel a certain level of comfort knowing that you had this thing on you that if the shit went down, we may lessen the body count. But we're getting into the weeds a little bit, but do we agree that the resource officers who are armed, I'm guessing. We're talking about police.
Typically, yeah.
Essentially, should that just be common fare now that, when I grew up, I had a junior high and a high school, and there was a guy with a windbreaker, and his biggest weapon was the amount of keys he had.
That's right.
He had a ball of keys that could kill anyone at a certain range.
And he was mostly concerned with where you were parking.
Right. But he was just kind of on your ass for whatever you were wearing or
Don't
whatever.
run.
Yeah.
Right, or not running. He told everyone not to run. But is it your belief that a certain amount, maybe 1 per 500 students or 1 per 1,000 students or some ratio, who is armed and qualified, obviously, should be on these campuses?
I think they can be a tremendous help. Now, they're not without their own controversy, and we've had a couple of high-profile incidents in the past few years of school resource officers or law enforcement in schools doing some, arresting a 6-year-old or doing something ridiculous. Now, there is a National Association of School Resource Officers that sets standards for how schools should hire, contract with, have a memorandum of understanding with the police department. They set some standards for how this should be done. And the majority of school resource officers do a great job and actually can serve as that sort of unschool personnel go to within the school walls. Different communities set them up different ways. You may have one person at every high school and then someone else patrolling other campuses. However, a community, local law enforcement can staff that need. I think it can be immensely helpful.
Well, it's something, politically, I don't hear it brought up that often. It does come up, but we jump right to gun controls and we get really caught up in, is it an automatic? Is it a semi-automatic? These are weapons of war. Nobody needs it, whatever. We don't seem to get into some of the more just sort of less sexy and more pragmatic discussions.
It's the ground and pound of the debate. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you say, oh, the guy had an automatic rifle was an automatic rifle. Now we're debating what the fuck weapon he had.
Yeah, most of the time they have handguns.
Yeah, it's
anyway. But yeah, and so politically, is there anyone who's pushing back one side or the other against the resource officer?
There had been some groups last spring, last summer that very vocal, but I think a really small minority pushing back on the school resource officers. And in response, this is in part after the murder of George Floyd and concern about law enforcement and overreach of power and law enforcement led homicide. So it was sort of bound up in all that. And I know a number of schools decided to start this past fall without their school resource officers. And every single one that I know of reinstated them after a couple of weeks, that realized that actually they were really helpful and just kind of keeping the temperature turned down with disruptive behavior, the not running part, that's not their job, but it just having that presence and that visibility help to keep things much more under control. And I think especially important right now when kids are back in school after such a crazy 2 years of remote and hybrid and concerns about health problem, all kinds of stuff. Kids and teachers and administrators are bringing a whole bunch of stress, 2 years plus of stress back into the school buildings with them. To get rid of school resource officers this past fall was a huge mistake, and schools have backtracked and put them back in. So I think it's perfect timing for us to really think about that as a resource. But I'll tell you, there's some schools that are doing some creative stuff where they're using local, like they'll use dads from a community, like or if we've got retired law enforcement, military, someone in the community who may not have a kid at the school, but wants to do some help to come in and just kind of spend a couple hours every week walking the halls, getting to know the kids, making sure things are okay, just adding to those eyes and ears from the community. So if you don't have a school resource officer, your school decides they don't want to, what can you use from the community as volunteers to just be in and be more of an adult presence at the same time too?
We reported on a story like that. It seemed, at least from the feel good angle they were presenting it from, a fabulous idea with these dads or whatever parents were available that had a little gravitas to them. And I would think that since apparently we don't have a ton of fear, for lack of a better word, of teachers. I don't know, like I kind of feel like we did. There's that presence is going to, I would imagine, do two things: deter some kids from making a big mistake and make the other kids feel safe. So what's the downside?
Right. And communities can just start doing it. I mean, get parent volunteers to go do it. So that's something that community members can take matters into their own hands and say, look, for the next couple of days of school week, whatever we have left, we're going to do this. Let's talk about doing this in the fall. At the same time, parents especially can start asking their schools, do you have a threat assessment team? Now, in Texas, it's actually been a law since, I think, late 2018, 2019, that every public school in Texas has to have access to some threat assessment team. They actually call them safe and supportive school program teams, but they have to do threat assessment. So threat assessment is, again, stuff that we teach. my team has taught thousands of personnel in Texas since that law passed. I don't know what happened in the Uvalde case specifically, but that's another thing that parents can be asking. They can do volunteering in schools to help just be a presence in the hallway, at pickup, at drop off, all of those. But they can start asking, does my kid's school have a threat assessment team? If not, let's figure out how we can get some things into place. And I will tell you, there are corporations now saying, look, if this is a budget issue, our kids go to these schools locally, we'll come in and fund it. We'll pay to have this training come in.
What's your take off campus, other shootings, supermarket shootings, inner city violence, just generally outside of the mass school shootings?
So mass shootings generally. So outside of school settings, mass shootings generally we saw in Buffalo, Las Vegas, things that happen in the community, Pulse nightclub, things like that. They often follow a very similar trajectory, meaning they're planned in advance. People know about the planning behavior, and the shooter tells other people about their plans beforehand, sometimes in great detail, sometimes more circumspect. But again, they're often driven by desperation. One thing we've seen in extremist violence, so this came out in Buffalo, was that, this is a person driven by extremist ideology, but a lot of what we know about what attracts people to that extremist ideology is people who, and especially men and young men and boys, who may actually be sort of have a diagnosable clinical depression. Let me explain real quick because it sounds confusing. The symptoms of depression in boys and men often come out as anger, trigger temper, level, like attraction to hate, anger. It's not what we often see, what we see in a movie setting is can't get out of bed, eating all the ice cream, like sort of that's more typical for, female depression. Depression in men and depression in boys is often active. It's anger, it's trigger temper, it's rage, it's hatred and attraction to hate. So one of the things that we've seen with people driven by extremist ideology, like in Buffalo, is that that actually may be a sign of an underlying depression. We can get that person connected to the right mental health care, maybe some medication or therapy, something like that. You clear up that depression, and that attraction to that extremist ideology tends to go away.
Yeah, well, obviously it's exclusively males doing this. I know we can carve out.
Not exclusively, primarily.
I shouldn't say exclusively. I know there's always the one we haven't heard of, but
we have that couple in San Fernando, and that's all I can think of.
If we could get guys to stop this, we'd be doing pretty good in general, and violence in general. It's I think Mark Garagos's dad, who used to be a prosecutor, would say, if you just locked up every male between like 18 and 32, there'd be zero. You could literally walk the streets with 5 Rolexes on.
Bye, honey. See you in 14 years.
Every night. There'd be no more violence. But you always think about it as rage and weaponized online and acting out and stuff. But yeah, I don't think of it as depression. What we are using as society's yardstick to measure depression, that yardstick is pink.
Yeah.
We used a woman's Hollywood version of, I was in a fetal position and I didn't even leave the house for 3 days and I just ate Haagen-Dazs right out of the tub, But the guy's version of depression is anger and fists and acting out and rage.
Well, and isn't that what they say? Boys act out, girls act in. So you're going to have to look for them differently.
Yeah, so some sort of, national attempt to focus on essentially male depression. Not that we don't feel sorry for the ladies, but you don't pose the threat that males pose when they're depressed, evidently.
Exactly. And this is what's behind, domestic violence. This is what's behind sort of these concerns about toxic masculinity, that attraction to this ideology and this rage may actually be a symptom of underlying depression. And so even to get, screening instruments so that family doctors can do a quick couple of questions for every male patient they see. Pediatricians can do the same thing for young men and boys. You can do it with girls too, but I think having a depression screening question as part of regular medical care would be really helpful as well.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all roads lead back to psychological and family structures and units and community and all that kind of stuff. And, we want to remove the instrument basically, but it's really the player of the instrument that we got to get to. And it's just an ass backwards way. Yeah, everything's right. It's a combination of everything. So when it comes to like physically hardening schools, you don't think that would have much effect, or did I hear you right?
No, no, it's that we saw a real push for metal detectors after Columbine, for example, and one of the things that we found quickly is boys especially like to figure out ways around it. And so you go in and talk to a couple of boys in any given school, and they've figured out how to get stuff around it into windows, how to bypass it. It can actually inadvertently create a prison feel to schools. And one of the things that actually helps to reduce levels of violence in schools, including school shootings, is having a positive climate where the students feel like they can trust the adults, or at least there's some adults they can go to and trust. And if you make it more of a prison feel, it feels like it's us against them. So it doesn't help much from the hardening target, again, because typically your threats are from within. And it actually can have kind of an adverse impact on how trusting students feel their school is to them.
So hardening of the target, not much there, in your opinion. School resource officers, good thing.
Yep. Depression screening,
and, prevention, obviously a good thing. Where are you on guns availability laws, 18 versus 21 years of age, extended clips and automatic versus, a single shot thing, or AR-15 type rifle versus a hunting rifle? Where do you come down on that stuff?
Well, let me go back to the research we did when I was with the Secret Service. We looked at how these school shooters got their guns, and 2/3 got them from their own home or a relative's home. It was relatively easy access. For the other third, it was not difficult. They had a friend who was of age who could buy them for them, or they were able to purchase the weapons directly. So I don't know about you. When I was growing up, I could find all kinds of street drugs in New York City, but I wouldn't have known where to go to buy a weapon. And it's not, what we're seeing is for kids who carry this out, it's not hard for them to find it, even if those weapons are secured within their own home. Now, I do want to emphasize, for people who are living in homes with weapons, it is paramount to make sure they are secured. Even if you think your kid can't find them, chances are they already know where they are. And so gun safes, lock boxes, trigger locks, whatever you can use. I would highly encourage anyone listening who has a weapon in their home, make sure it's secure, make sure the kid doesn't know where the key is, make sure, even if you think your kid would never find the weapon, chances are they already know where it is. So make it that much harder if you own weapons already. What I would tell you is that when you look at the prevalence of mass shootings in our country versus other westernized countries, we have the same levels of depression and problems that they do. We have cornered the market on mass shootings. And the one differentiator here is that it is very easy for people of all ages to buy weapons here legally, illegally, and weapons that we're talking about of real mass casualty caliber. So what we've seen, the change in recent years, is that the fatality counts have gone up so much higher than shootings we have seen in decades prior. And it's in part because of the large capacity, because the fully automatic aspects that these weapons being used now are capable of much greater volume of lethality than was possible, a couple decades ago, a couple of years ago.
So it's everything.
So what would you implement if you had a magic wand?
If I had a magic wand, a couple of things. So first and foremost, if I had a magic wand, I would make sure all local law enforcement is trained in threat investigations. I would have extreme risk protection orders in every state. I would get rid of assault weaponry, and I'd make that incredibly difficult to access, but for our military personnel and our law enforcement who need it. That's my personal opinion. And I'm sure I'm going to get flack for that. And that's part of the problem, is that even expressing opinions is polarizing. And I've certainly been threatened for expressing opinions. And it's so easy to do this, throw shade, harassment threats online, et cetera. But I would also love to see I'd love to see something creative, like we've got great suicide hotlines in place. Can we implement something like a mass shooting hotline? I have worked hundreds, if not thousands, of threat cases in my career, and especially when I work cases of a kid in school who has made a threat. Oftentimes what we hear is, I'm having these thoughts and I don't know what to do about them. And it's not the same as a delusion or hearing voices. It's sort of these intrusive thoughts. Like, I'm thinking about, killing this kid who's been bullying me for all year. And so I started to do some research, and I read up on other, like the Columbine killers, and they felt the same way. And then I started to read about their planning, and I thought, well, maybe this is something I have to do. Kids have these thoughts, and then they start researching these thoughts, and then they come to the conclusion that, oh, this must be me too. And so if we had a place where you could call a hotline and say, hey, I'm having these thoughts, I don't want them, or they're scaring me, or I'm worried I might act on them, just like we do with suicide hotlines, you've got someone in place who can say, hey, I'm here to listen. I've talked with people who had planned attacks and they were stopped, and they say, look, I want to get the word out that these thoughts are, they're concerning, but you don't have to act on them. And how can I help kids who are having the same types of thoughts? So there are some creative things we can do out there that aren't being done. And I'd love to see any of these take hold.
Well, it always drives me nuts, and I've mentioned it 1,000 times, but in LA, we have this cadre of electronic freeway signs, and all they ever say is click it or ticket on there.
Some nonsense relating to the holiday or something.
Slow for the cone zone, something like that. I don't know. How
Buzz
about
driving is drunk driving.
Yes. How about put a little and I argue that if buzz driving is drunk driving, then sober driving is buzz driving.
Thank you.
So I don't sign off on that. But I would say go ahead and put some information on there. Feeling sad?
Yeah.
Call this number.
Yeah. And just to add to what you said about, that's a great idea with the hotline, because I've called suicide prevention on somebody's behalf before, and I needed support on how I was supposed to deal with this. And so anyone could call who was afraid anyone was going to do something insane and get that support so they know how to personally interact with them.
Yeah, it strikes me that the person that's going to call is the mom who's driving home from work with the depressed kid at home.
Right.
That's the person that's going to use the hotline, not the kid per se. A lot of interesting thoughts and food for thoughts. Marisa Randazzo. All right. Randazzo. I put an N I put a second N in there when I shouldn't have.
Doctor.
The
Dr. Marisa.
Director of Threat Management for ONTIC Technologies, and you can shoot her a tweet, especially if you disagree with her gun buyback and mandatory confiscation.
Is that what she said?
That's what I heard.
Adam, I think I said guns for women only. I think we decided that that's really the ultimate solution here. And we're not trying to take away guns from women, because they're not the problem.
Yeah.
With that controversial statement.
Great button for the
For a
segment.
change, they're not the problem. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you carving out
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
All right. Bill Bellamy's not in the building yet, but we'll soldier on. First, I'll tell you about Blinds Galore. They got a huge Memorial Day weekend sale. Yeah. Whoa, it's upon us now. It is coming up. It's on. It started a day or two ago. High-quality blinds, shades, and shutters, custom built to your exact measurements. Nothing until you order it. Just take your measurements, and you can customize it online. Family-owned and run for nearly 25 years. They're the experts. I have these guys' products in my master bedroom. And if there's a window up high and you got a shade, you can have an electronic shade, and you can charge it, and it lasts a long time. And you don't have to heat it up. You don't have to run wiring to it or bust open the walls or anything. You can work it off your phone. You can work it off the remote. If you have any questions, they're experts, and they're customer care experts. They'll help you every step of the way, either online or over the phone. So let's get in on the big sale. Am I right, Dawson?
Order your free samples today so you'll be ready when their Memorial Day sale starts this week, and everything will be up to 50% off. Visit blindsgalore.com and let them know that Adam sent you. That's blindsgalore.com.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
And now, Alcoa presents Definitely Not a Jew on the Adam Carolla Show. Dateline, Harrodsburg, Kentucky. A 36-year-old man was charged with 7 counts of burglary after a string of robberies in which he stole over 100 pairs of women's underwear. All of the burglaries took place in Shady Acres Mobile Home Park. Definitely not a Jew.
Well, we're still waiting on Bill Bellamy. We're not able to get hold of him, so we'll see if he arrives or not. Meanwhile, we'll soldier on. Maybe we'll do an extended dance version of the news. I have a few things, one that's not going to take up too much time. But in the names that sound close-ish, but couldn't be further apart, I wrote down Jared Leto and Jay Leno.
Oh, wow.
Very close.
Yeah.
If you're drunk and you say it fast.
Especially if it's just Jay Leno.
Sound about the same, but no two dudes in Hollywood could be further separated than those two dudes.
You're right.
One's very mechanical oriented and one's
cult
Jay
leader.
Leno. Oh.
Yeah.
That reminds
Sorry,
me.
step on your joke.
Reminds me of something I thought of the other day. You know, we're always talking about two words that sound too alike, and we don't need them both. We don't need amid and amidst.
Amidst. Yeah.
We also in the I agree in the pull and push department. I got fucked up. I was actually leaving Howie Mandel's warehouse, and he had the pull, but I read it through the glass backwards because it was on the outside.
My
and
post office has that.
It transferred to the inside. So I paused, and then I saw the 2 L's, and I yanked the door.
Because your
and I
head
fucked
recognizes
myself up.
pull, but it's backwards.
Can I say this? If you are making a sign, if you're labeling things, if no label whatsoever would be better than your labeling, you've done a piss. Like if you work for Boeing or Airbus and someone said landing gear up, landing gear down, it's actually more confusing when you label it. Just let them guess.
Yeah.
Like I feel like my batting average on doors would be better with zero signs.
Feels like the main benefit, only benefit of a sign is to be clear.
I completely agree.
Main purpose.
We also. Somebody tweeted me this. There was this, I don't know, everyone's nightmare, though I really don't know the story, but somebody evidently crashed a car in Skid Row.
No, I heard
Somebody
about that.
tweeted
Oh my
me this.
God, this video is hard to watch. Did you watch it?
I watch now. There's a couple of things. It's a convertible, looks like a convertible Mustang or a Camaro. I think it's a Mustang. It's a convertible Mustang. So we could be talking about a rental car here because that's... Could be a rental car, although I don't know if the license plate or whatever it is.
No,
but
sounds
anyway,
about right.
Might be why he's playing it so fast and loose, driving away.
he drove, I guess, got into a car accident in the middle of Skid Row, and then so the good residents of Skid Row just started picking the car apart.
But wait.
And then he tried to take off, and he hit another car. And then the good residents of Skid Row decided it was time to take him out of his car
Teach
for a
him a lesson.
little frontier justice.
Yeah.
And then they pulled the person out of the car, and then they beat the crap out of the guy. And then they essentially, first they looted the car, and then they looted him. But the person that tweeted me this pointed out the fact that 6 days earlier, when we ran the clip of the motorist in Florida who had the seizure behind the wheel and the car just started coasting in oncoming traffic.
Still a group of people rushed to the car.
They converged on the car and they saved the person.
Very different way.
Yeah.
And then I guess Chris captured this. I don't know. We'll replay it. I forgot about it.
Oh, sure. Got to see it with Chris in there.
Grocery store, yeah. And then everyone stops in there. They break open the window. Before that, this guy tries to break open the window, and he tries to hit it with his bare hand and can't do it. Yeah.
Ouch.
And
This is a Florida crowd, man.
I love it. Yeah,
If
just
this was L.A., they'd grab her fucking briefcase and her backpack and push her out in traffic.
smash and grab while she's
Yes.
sleeping.
Wow. Well, there it is.
Ah.
And not even a week later, that's what happened. I don't know all the nuts and bolts of the story, but it's everyone's greatest nightmare. A bonfire of the vanities, perhaps.
Yeah.
It was chronicled in.
don't-
Judgment Night,
Yep.
famously. You just turn down the wrong street,
I Am
and next
Legend.
thing you know,
Yeah.
humanity converges on you.
Like vultures.
If you watch the video and you get toward the end, at some point the poor guy gets dragged out of the car and they're basically beating on him. The scariest guy in the world was the guy who comes up at the very end. I don't know, he's just a white guy or a white guy on a scooter. He's just a white guy, and he just comes up and goes, "Oh, sort of stumbles upon the whole thing and kicks the guy in the head." I want that guy put in a fucking wood chipper. I honestly do. I really do. Like, if you come upon something and some citizen is just having the shit kicked out of him in the street, and you just sort of show up and go, I guess I'll just kick this person in the orbital socket while they lay on the ground. So they backed up. I couldn't figure out
This
why.
guy's got to be under some influence or
The
just
Who's
driver.
there to score drugs?
I don't know why.
hard
Yeah, that
to-
makes sense.
yeah.
I don't know why he wasn't able to avoid hitting the
Yeah,
car in front of
yeah.
them. Although the front end of his car was pretty jacked up. So the partisan crowd pulls him out of the Mustang.
and real casual about it. Everyone's just like, well, this is something to do today.
I don't think they have a great fear of law enforcement in that community. Let's just say, but they pulled the guy out.
God.
They drag him out.
He's trying to almost run these guys over.
They're trying to.
No, he's trying to get away.
Yeah, he didn't really.
Oh, you just missed. You got to play it.
Oh, sorry.
So the white guy with the backpack just kind of comes by and is like, I think I'll kick this guy in the face while he lays there. This whole like, oh, they're poor, but they're proud. Fuck poor people. This guy just kicks him right in the fucking head. First
Yeah,
off,
man.
I want that guy arrested. Not
your
that
customer.
they ever will. That guy's bad. And then the other guy I hate are the guys who narrate the video. Where there's like,
World star.
they're always like, he hit the car. Oh, now they're pulling him out. Oh, now he's
Thanks,
getting
Bob
kicked in the head.
Costas.
Yes, thank you for your play-by-play.
Costas didn't do a lot of play-by-play.
Oh, God damn it.
But
Or a studio guy.
You're a motherfucker.
why do I hate Bob Costas so
We all
much?
do.
What?
That came up at my house yesterday.
Because
We're-
he's super smug?
Yeah, he's
Wait a second.
smug. I can recognize. Smug, recognize smug.
He's not. He's smug. We were watching The Last Dance for the 17th time at my house, and Bob Costas came in, and all of a sudden, Andy had a lot to say.
Yeah.
Why do you guys all have thoughts about Bob Costas?
He's a little preachy sometimes.
He's a little know-it-all-y.
And he's a little smug. And I think what we love most about Charles Barkley and Shaq is they seem to have a sense of humor about themselves.
They do.
And
Costas is very serious.
and Joe Buck has a sense of humor about himself. Oh God, I'm trying to
Olbermann or Collinsworth, Al Michaels.
Tony Romo.
These guys are affable.
Yes, they're affable, and they can sort of have a joke at their
own
and then
expense.
you go back to the Dandy Don Meredith and Howard Cosell and those guys like up in the booth, and they sort of had a sense of humor about
Howard
themselves.
Cosell did.
Howard Cosell would have
self-deprecating.
He would have a few pops on Monday Night
Well,
Football.
there you go.
Well, you'd be playing in Buffalo in November,
Sure.
and those booths were just wide open.
I know. My dad used to announce from
Oh,
them.
that's right. And so they'd take something to warm their
warm you up,
cockles
sure.
a little bit, little brandy shot. And then he'd bust. Yes, you could. Look, all the times he would interview Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali would be like, "What's going on in your head?
They're a great two-man
Give me
act."
that rug." And he'd like start trying to grab his hairpiece.
Okay, yes, that's fine.
Costas wouldn't have been down with
no.
grabbing his hair.
We should feel the same way about Costas as we do about Brian Gumbel, but I don't think we're allowed to dislike Brian Gumbel the same way.
Oh, it's like a hate crime
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Yes, Brian Gumbel is
see.
very
Sober.
He literally
Sanctimonious.
lowers his glasses
Yes.
and looks down upon his audience. Like he literally slides his glasses down and he physically looks down his nose.
I like that.
At
Have you noticed his
everybody.
move? Sorry, did you but on Gumbel? Have you noticed his move on Real Sports? Like the thing will come back from the rolling package. Guy will be sitting there. He'll be sitting here taking notes. God knows he's taking notes on. He's the
Right.
executive producer taking
Right.
notes, and he's like, "Jim, well, tell me why you're so." He's looking down and looking over the glasses.
Multitasking.
Yeah, Jim, tell me about this.
Adam, I think you'll like this. A famous story in our house. I think I'm getting it right. Back in the day, I think when I was first born, freezing cold game. My dad was either doing play-by-play or color. I don't know, somewhere in the booth. But the booth was
College, pro?
No, pro. And I don't remember.
Chiefs game?
I don't remember because he was always on the road. And I was an infant, but it freezing in the stands.
It was July. He was out with this lady.
Exactly. Freezing in the stands. I think my mom was holding me, wanted to get into the booth because it was freezing. They wouldn't let women in.
Wow. The Gamaras are up there.
I wonder how much drinking went on in those
Oh,
booths.
God.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're not sure what happened to Bill Bellamy, but that's all right. What we'll do is
We got
we'll
plenty.
take a break. We got plenty of news, and we'll do that right after this.
Well, this is a bit of a timing issue and also a little bit of irony. California Senate has advanced a package of gun control bills in the wake of the mass shooting that we've been speaking about the whole show. Among the bills is one that seems to replicate the Texas abortion law, which deputizes private citizens to turn others in. So this is the new law of the land. Hope everybody's happy. The California rule would allow private citizens to sue anyone who manufactures, distributes, or sells the so-called assault weapons, ghost guns, parts of ghost guns in the state, and it would provide an incentive to people to do so, just like the Texas law does. Since Texas's abortion law took effect, at least a dozen states have introduced copycat laws to limit abortion in their state. But local scholars and Supreme Court justices identified that the mechanisms would likely be employed beyond abortion, and that's what we're seeing now.
There'll be much less of this than the abortion.
Well,
turn-in.
it was funny because remember a few weeks ago, maybe it was even longer now, I did a story about how not the NRA, but another gun group in California was teaming up with, Planned Parenthood, basically saying like, we're not saying we agree, we're not saying we don't agree, we're just saying we don't want you coming for us next.
I'm just saying practically, if I go, I'm going to turn you in because I don't think you should own that gun, you may go, oh, speaking of that gun, I think I may shoot you before you pick up the phone.
So where are you headed?
Versus, I'm going to throw my fetus at you. Zygote?
You're
Those are the
saying,
options.
you're saying one would be more likely than the other.
I say one will be more likely than the
very
other.
good
All right,
point.
time will tell.
One
We'll visit. The crush
the
remind
clock.
us of 1 year.
possess a physical weapon. That's my hunch.
Yeah, no, that's a
all
very good
that's
point.
A hunch.
Well, California's not done. The police department in Sacramento held a gun buyback event. Now, just tell me, is this a good thing or a bad thing? They held a gun buyback event, but they weren't, and it was no questions asked, come drop it off. And droves of people came. You know what? Why? You know what they were giving away?
I heard about this.
Gas gift cards.
Oh, my
Gas
We are
God.
so fucked. And there is no money to get around. They're like, here, take my gun. Because they're getting $50 gas gift cards, which, will fill almost all your tank.
Quarter tank.
Apparently, it was so successful, they ran out of gift cards. It was 134 people dropped off firearms for the gift cards.
Well, I don't want to stereotype, but the guys who have all the heat, who have guns to sell back,
They have guns to spare?
Yeah, they came from Temple.
not driving EVs. You know what I mean? Not big Tesla dudes. I see these
More the
guys
truck
in
nuts crowd.
older Suburbans. I'm going a little different direction here,
okay.
but
Hang
a larger car more of a gas guzzler
Sure.
type car, not driving around smart cars, no EVs, no Volts, no Bolts, no Teslas. So they no Leafs, they need fuel.
Yeah.
Volts are Volts.
Right.
Right. So then the question, philosophically, where do you guys think, like when it comes to, so gas out here is over $7 in some places. It's nutty. Considering gas, and it's been proposed, but so I have multiple thoughts. One is gas is super expensive. Two, it absolutely disproportionately affects poor people. And it's a pretty simple equation. First off, many people who are well-to-do drive a Tesla or drive something that's a hybrid or drive something that's a pure plug-in or something. So
not only would it affect them less, they've taken themselves out of the game.
Right. Some of these, if you make, the percentage, let's just say Los Angelinos, where gas is knocking on the door of 7 and above 7 in certain places. What percentage of people who make under $40,000 a year in Los Angeles drive an electric vehicle?
Yeah.
And,
Zero.
Okay, close to zero. And then you go, what percentage of rich folk drive electric vehicles? Well, it's a pretty substantial, at least out here in Los Angeles. And then you go, what is the commute? I mean, think about work. I always think about the gardener and the workers with these trucks and their trailers, and they're going to do the tree stuff and whatever. They're all coming in from deep valleys into the Palisades and
Teachers,
what have you.
Any daycare worker, they're generally coming from some area other to another area.
And then you kind of go, well, look, you guys don't need a lesson in this, but if you make $500,000 a year and gas is $7 a gallon, that's X amount, a small percentage of whatever your income is, depending on how much you drive. If you make $40,000 a year and it's $7 a gallon, then it gets into a much higher percentage.
Sure.
It really affects and kicks the fuck out of poor Hispanic gardeners, working people, teachers and stuff, people that have to commute, all the people that can't afford a house in Sherman Oaks.
Can't work from home.
Right. Live out in Simi Valley, can't work from home, have to go in and stock shelves or drive the forklift or whatever it is.
Food or whatever.
It just kicks the fuck out of those people. It's a major, increase for them. Our gas is $7. I mean, you turn on the news like it's up to $4.04 national average, or $3.07. We're at $7.10. Could we just drop the tax? Could we just roll it back? Could we just go? We fucked up as a nation. Like, hey, Gavin Newsom, you're killing these poor people. Can you just pull it off the table?
No gas tax until further notice.
Just pull it off the table. We have a surplus, income-wise.
Historic surplus.
Yeah, just repeal it. Let people drive. And by the way, when you pull the $1.50 off, they'll still be at $5.35. It'll still be higher.
Don't worry,
than
they'll still be gouged.
Yeah, we don't. It's not 10% higher than if the national average is $4, 10% is $4.40. We're at 7.
Right.
We're climbing toward the 50% range. What about the poor people? You love them so much. Just fucking pull it back.
That would be amazing.
It would be nice. Dawson's got hand movements.
It's been introduced by Kevin Kiley to our state legislature at least 5 times.
But it keeps getting shot down.
Keeps getting shot down. In fact, one time though, the legislators used it to. Said they were going to talk about the gas tax and then used that session to add more taxes.
Well, they're right.
They talked about it.
Here's how that reminds me. All right, so here's the bigger, more nefarious thought, which is certainly in California, I believe this is going on. But nationally, if you hear them speak about gas, there's a lot of like, well, this is an opportunity for us to transition, so you'll say to whoever chief of, Pete Buttigieg, you go, these gas prices are killing people. And they go, understood. We all feel it, blah, blah, blah. This is underscores the necessity to move on to renewable or whatever. Certainly in California, I don't know that they like it, But I think in their mind, if we can drive more people toward an electric vehicle, it's not a bad thing.
So this is part of the road diet, essentially.
It's kind of, we are influencing people through this thing that we can't say we like, but we're not really doing a lot to get rid of it. So maybe we do kind of enjoy it.
I got some bad news for those guys, because you can throw an electric vehicle onto the long list of things I can't afford in California.
And look, until
I can't afford a house, I can't afford an electric car.
You're already talking to us about rolling blackouts coming this summer. So unless you fucking guys get to work on the grid, I cannot see.
Good luck, Mid-Wilshire.
Be careful what you wish for. You don't want a substantial percentage of your populace making the move to electric cars if we don't have the grid and the infrastructure for it. And by the way, Chris, I think I liked this tweet, but speaking of this, I can't remember if maybe it was Finland. Somebody tweeted me this, but their Green Party in Finland we want nuclear power.
It's clean energy.
Clean. It's good. We need it.
Do it.
We're now down with it.
Okay.
So we'll see how that works. Anyway.
I did think of one silver lining to all of this gas mishigas. Probably not enough money to afford gas for a gas-powered leaf blower.
Oh, that's good.
So that'd be nice. A little quieter.
Molotov cocktails are probably going to be at an all-time low the next time the race riot breaks out.
Right.
There's some upside. You're right.
Remember Josh Duggar?
Yeah.
How he got himself in a little soup over some child porn that he...
Who was he?
The
family that
19
had like
kids
19
and counting
kids.
reality show. And wasn't he the one where they found the porn on his like work computer
Was
at
he
the auto
husband?
dealership?
Yeah, auto dealership.
He's a Duggar. He's not like a husband of a Duggar.
No, but I mean, is he the dad Duggar?
Oh,
or
no,
one of the Duggar
I think he's the oldest
children?
son.
Oh, the oldest
or
son.
at least the older son. He was sentenced because he's been talking about this for a while.
You're in a child porn and you got 19 kids living in it. And why would you ever leave the house?
That came up in the trial.
No, it did?
It sure did.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we can leave that at that.
Jesus
Yep.
Christ.
So he's been sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison for receiving child sexual abuse material, including a video that one investigator described among the worst he had ever seen.
He was at the car dealership with all this?
I thought he was.
That's what I thought he was, too.
And he said, anyone could have used my computer. And they're like, no, they couldn't have.
Let me
They
tell you
have records of
something. I've been in
logging.
many car dealerships. That is the worst place to look at
A lot
kiddie
of
porn.
windows.
It's one big window.
Low cubicles.
Huge open floor plan.
Yeah.
The whole reason I have an Aston Martin that's Aston Martin Racing Green with an oxblood red interior. I went up to the Galpin, Aston Martin, whatever. I ordered the whole car. They give you the fender swatch. They give you the headliner. You get the wood inlays. You put it all on the table. You've never felt like a more, it's for a poor person from Valley, it's the greatest day of my
aspire to
life.
that.
You lay down and you go, well, I like the burnt umber or the anthracite, smoked anthracite, and you start laying down the suede.
These aren't words.
What are these words?
I had the exterior color, green, Aston Martin Racing Green, and a black interior. So it makes sense to me. I was walking out of the car dealer, passing by one of the many offices with the full glass facade. Guy's screensaver on his computer was a British Racing Green 50s Jaguar with a
naked boy inside.
With a naked Duggar with a red leather interior on this convertible, like with a kind of Bordeaux looking interior. And I was like walking out and I stopped and I like looked at his screensaver and I was like, oh man.
Good heavens.
That is a British car with a beautiful.
Hard to say.
I walked right back up to the Aston Martin showroom thing and I said, scratch it. Give me the red leather.
Very good, sir. Screensaver red.
Right. And which is another funny conversation that I'll tell you in a second. It has to do with red. But the open floor plan, the endless floor to ceiling glass,
a lot of people
and
walking
everything, a lot
behind
of
you.
traffic, not a good child porn place.
Well, let this be a lesson to you.
Yes, the red, the funny. I have conversations with people all the time, and it never makes sense. But I was at the same dealership some time later, and the guy said, we get these Aston Martins in all different colors. The guy just recently, he picked one up in Viper Red. And I said, they call it Viper Red? And he said, yep. And I said, well, Viper is a sports car made by Dodge. And
or snake.
And by the way, if you go to Le Mans you in the GT category and your Aston Martin DB9 could be going up against a Dodge Viper. Aston Martin calls their red Viper Red. I don't think they would do that. And he said, that's what it's called. And I said, Aston Martin has named their red after one of their competitors' cars. Call it Viper Red.
Okay.
I said,
that seems so unlikely.
But by the way, it's kind of boring. Aston Martin's a classy company. They would come up with something that ended with violet or something.
A little basic.
A parade of violet, or not violet, but a parade of crimson parade or something. They'd come up with something.
That's what I'm on right now.
He's like, it's called Viper Red. The guy's car is called Viper Red. What do you want me to tell you? And I said, I understand you work at this dealership. And I understand you ordered this car. And I understand it says Viper Red. I refuse to believe that Aston Martin calls their red Viper Red because that's who they compete against at Le Mans. And he goes, it's called Viper Red. And then after about 20 minutes of going around, he went, oh, so you order your car from the dealership or you order your car from the factory, they'll paint it any color you want. This customer wanted his Aston Martin painted
in the
Viper Red, which is the color of his Viper.
Right.
And then I said, fine.
That's great.
But we could have prevented this, but you wouldn't allow it.
All right. Well, can I go back to Rogan's news then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else was watching the Johnny Depp trial. I feel like I'm the only one, but it might be coming to a conclusion now. They did have supermodel Kate Moss, who dated Johnny Depp from 1994 to 1998, testify for Depp in the defamation trial. So Moss basically volunteered and wanted to set the record straight because she was asked about a rumor that Depp pushed her down a flight of stairs when they were on vacation in Jamaica one year, which Amber Heard referenced during her testimony. That was that thing, I don't know if you saw, it was a ton of memes and videos. I can't remember the reason, but she wasn't allowed to reference Kate Moss. And when she did, Depp's side cheered and pumped their fists.
It's not that she's not allowed too, because I talked to Garagos about this. If you're going to bring something up, it is now in this
play.
case. It's now in play. So if you get sued and you say to your lawyer or you say to the other lawyer, well, I've mapped out a whole time sequence to when they go, oh, you have?
Let's see
We'd
it.
like to see that.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's mine. And they go, well, you brought it up. And now it's evidence and it's in.
That makes perfect.
So she brought it up.
Perfect sense.
And once she brought it up, they went, oh, good, now she's
Let's
in.
grab Kate, get her take.
Right.
So Moss testified on Skype or whatever, she was in Gloucester, that she fell down the stairs because it was raining and Depp ran back to help her and carried her up the stairs and she was crying. Here is Moss's definitive answer as to whether she was abused by Depp in that way.
Did Mr. Depp push you in any way down the stairs?
No.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever push you down any stairs?
No, he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
Time has been kind to Kate Moss.
Oh, she looks great.
Brand new.
Johnny Depp also took the stand again.
Hold on. You got to find, I just looked at the lawyer, I think it's his frames that did it, but the lawyer from The Simpsons, not Lionel Hutz.
Oh, yeah.
But
Your Honor, this is clearly a violation of my...
Yeah. Didn't that guy look like that guy?
Yes, he did. That guy has blue hair? Either way, it's just that guy.
It is that guy.
This is clearly a violation.
The glasses are very Anna Wintour. They're not very masculine.
Is it pronounced Wintour?
Wintour?
Or something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gay.
Yeah, you almost got me there.
Which Simpson is she? Find the Simpson lawyer and don't give me Lionel Hutz.
Well, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Now we have that guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, legit.
You sound like him.
We need that guy juxtaposed to the guy that just talked to Kate Moss. And look, Here's how you know he never punched Kate Moss. She'd be dead. I mean, she was 80 pounds the whole time they were
Vaporized.
together. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Amber did not take the stand again because she didn't. I don't think she did very well in the court of public opinion. But Depp did hop back up there for one more round of testimony.
Depp seems like he's enjoying himself.
He does like to smirk and like to, yeah.
Is it going his way? Do you have a
I think
consensus?
so.
Seems to be.
I think so.
And he's waving to the crowd when he leaves. And
Playing with
Getting
house money.
flowers, bouquets, the big fans out there.
Broadway.
So here's a clip of Depp's testimony reacting to the effect that Heard's accusations have had on him, and this is half of it. He has a lot more adjectives than I'm going to play.
Horrible. Ridiculous, humiliating.
Hold on a second.
Ludicrous.
Started from the top again. I have a theory. Let's take it from the top.
Horrible.
All right, you can pause it. Maybe the reason this trial's taking 45 days is because he takes 10 minutes in between words.
He does do
How was
that.
lunch, Johnny?
Oh,
Horrible.
Oh, so it wasn't,
Dry.
Oh,
Tasteless.
so it wasn't good?
It was not what I desired.
It's disappointing.
Horrible.
Not what you
Tried.
Okay.
I don't know how you could cross-examine him because he takes 10 minutes.
true.
We might be able to wrap this whole thing up in 3 days if those guys would fucking get a metronome and get moving a little bit.
To your point, why do you think I'm not playing the whole clip? There are so many pauses. We're just saying this is the back end of his adjectives.
But I do feel like he's asserted himself as a much more skilled actor than Amber Heard.
Also, the interesting thing is anyone, including Amber Heard, especially Amber Heard, who's testifying on behalf of Amber, along with Amber, addresses all of the answers to the jury as opposed to whoever's talking to them. And as a person watching from home, I don't think it plays very well. I don't know if the jury's like, stop looking at me.
Did you see the psychiatrist who they brought up
The
there?
crazy guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Oh my God.
What happened?
Yeah.
Listen,
Whose witness was it?
people think
Amber's.
I'm on the spectrum.
Yeah.
What this guy's an
had some
insult
tics.
to anyone who's on the spectrum of Asperger's.
Well, you only want to talk about tires?
Rims and tires. This guy was. I have no idea why you would want to put him.
Because that might have been the only expert you could find that sided with you. Because he was like, this hasn't changed my opinion one iota.
He was chomping.
Yeah.
And we're not exaggerating.
You can find it easily, but let's
right, let's
get
watch it.
Johnny's full, at least
All right.
half of his full view on what this has done to him.
Ridiculous, humiliating, ludicrous, painful, savage, unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false. All false.
Now, it's interesting because I've watched a lot of this, and he is no angel. I mean, he clearly has some very serious addiction problems. At least that's what they're presenting. And he would probably be a royal pain in the ass to be married to. But it seems that what they've presented is a woman who also has issues, who is sort of taking advantage of some of his less lucid states, perhaps. And I think that's my totally uninformed guess on how the jury is going to find this.
Yeah, whenever they do it. I mean,
Well, this could be the last day. Well, thank God.
I talked to Garagos about this yesterday. I said, how much does it cost to do this? Like how? And he's like, $500,000 a week to your lawyers minimum before expenses. You know what I mean?
Expert witnesses and stuff?
Yeah. Well, the lawyers are like, hey, here's my billable hours. And then they go, and by the way,
We got
there's
lunch every day.
37 other people at the office you got to pay for.
Right.
Like, this is just my hours. He's like, $500K a week.
This has been
to put this
22
thing
days.
on. I know. And I keep saying to him, who the fuck is paying for this? Who's Amber Heard's paying? And he said he thinks it's insurance.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Whose insurance?
Her insurance.
Her like homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
covers-
How does that work?
I have no fucking
Because-
idea.
Great question.
But I would love to know. I wish I
I
could
got
have
questions.
handled my, a Texas lawsuit.
Yeah, your homeowner's insurance.
With the patent trolls.
Yeah, that's right.
Covers earthquake, flood, and patent trolls.
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, that's his, I've asked him 3 times, who is paying for Amber Heard? And he's like, insurance.
That's interesting because
That's
she
the only
said,
thing he can think of. No one would take it on contingency.
well, she said on the stand, when they were grilling her about not donating the money that she was supposed to donate, and said, I would be able to if Johnny would stop suing me. So that's what she claimed, that it's out of her pocket. Who knows? Also, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Ellen Barkin gave testimony for Amber's side, which was really kind of interesting. And I mean, I think, I don't know, maybe a 30-year-old relationship for a couple months, like back in the day.
Ellen and
Johnny, sorry.
Oh, Johnny.
Oh.
And she testified that it was very tumultuous, a lot of drink, abuse of alcohol,
What a
very
beautiful
erratic.
child that would have been.
Yeah.
They see, but also for Johnny, for the jurors, I mean, you got to be swayed a little when he's like, all right, next up, we're bringing the Swedish bikini team. They saw Johnny for a while. Simply, look, it was consensual, but it was obviously sexual.
Called the stand
for
was
many
January,
teens.
February, and March.
We're going to bring the Raiderettes up here after lunch. Like, every single hot chick he's plowed in Hollywood is now up there defending him.
Yeah. I mean, Ellen was on Amber's side, but she's looking very distinguised these days.
Right. She's had some work done.
She's an older lady, and she,
Do you have those attorneys?
Here we go.
Oh, man.
There you go. Well done, sir.
Even the parts in the same place.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Maybe.
Same mouth.
Look, this guy could have watched could have fallen asleep to The Simpsons when he was in law school or something.
That's a lawyer.
And just went, and woke up like, I got an idea for frames and glasses. All right, so.
All right. Aerosmith frontman Steven Tyler entered a treatment program following.
Wait, we got Ellen Barkin?
Yeah.
Or we're gonna see her?
I mean, we
Johnny's
can. They can look for it.
Steven Tyler too.
That's right. That's why he's
That's how
in rehab.
prolific he is.
Yeah, the Ellen Barkin one I'm sure is findable. Just let me know if you.
Oh no, I'd rather have crazy psychiatrist guy. That
Me
guy
too.
He's
Okay,
flapping
yeah.
his chomping his flappers and
There's a
mussing with his
supercut
hair.
of it too.
Yeah, he has to be all over the internet, Max Betta. He's the crazy
He's
one.
TikTok famous now.
Sorry.
So while they find that, Steven Tyler in rehab after a recent relapse, prompting the band to put their upcoming Vegas residency on hold.
I was just never thought about this, but the dude looks like a lady. Methinks thou protest too much.
Yes, indeed.
He's talking to the mirror.
Yeah.
He is talking. That is
Singing to a hairbrush.
That is a lady right
Yeah.
there. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
That song hasn't held up well.
And by the way, talk about rockin'. He's 74.
I know.
Sometimes you just got to go back to rehab. He underwent foot surgery on Tuesday, and in preparation for the band's return to the stage, and in managing his pain, suffered a relapse.
There's some guys
Since
who
Tuesday?
treat relapse like women treat plastic surgery, where it's like, I just wanted to get back in and take care of a couple of things, a little eye work.
A little tune-up.
Just a little tune-up. Like, they have that relationship with
Loose
it.
ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, to what end? A statement which was shared on Instagram says, as many of you know, our beloved brother Steven has worked on his sobriety for many years after foot surgery to prepare for the tour and pain management, recently relapsed and voluntarily entered treatment to concentrate on his health and recovery. Aerosmith said they will subsequently be canceling the June and July dates of the Deuces Are Wild residency, which was slated to begin at Dolby at Park MGM on June 17th.
In Vegas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I would be a horrible bandmate because when you cancel that show, Stromer's wife put that whole thing, did all the...
What?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so you have inside info.
Well, she's quite the accomplished... I guess she was like a choreographer, and then she made into stage and
Amazing.
put all the big sets together and designs all this stuff. So
Sure.
she said, you do something like that, and you got to be looking at several $100,000 a week, and
Again.
maybe more, and enough to pay for a trial. And
for example,
so Steven rolls his ankle, has got to get a little surgery, and he's like, and I took a few too many Vicodin. Let's just go ahead and cancel those shows. And I'd be like, get one of those walking boots and
throne.
Foo Fighters, exactly. Sit in the throne.
Listen, if I see you reaching for a Michelob backstage, I'll slap it out of your hand. But
Billy Idol pulled it off. I don't know why you did it.
Show's kind of got to go on, buddy.
Do you think she has any inside info on Adele?
Oh, Mrs. Stromer.
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't know. I'll ask Eric next time.
That'd be interesting because that was kind of a shit show and like a who's telling the truth situation on why that whole thing was
She
canceled.
was blaming everyone but herself.
Right.
We have Dr. Spiegel, psychiatrist.
Yeah, this is the cut that's kind of been going around.
Bryan, you tell me how Asperger's this guy looks.
Everyone's a little confused. What's wrong with them?
Johnny's leaning in.
You have to answer questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was a lot of that lip smacking and
a lot of Depp's
tics.
reactions.
Yeah,
too.
it seems like he has tics, Tourette's kind of thing, or even like sensory issues.
Not the guy you'd want to put up there in your defense.
He doesn't strike you as competent. I mean, he probably is.
He's the psychological expert for Amber's side about what a mess Johnny is. So it was a little.
He's basically the guy from Independence Day when they go down to the bunker in Area 51 and he's got all that gray hair. He's like, I haven't seen people in a long. Oh,
do you want to
humanity?
See it? Do you want to see it?
Yeah, like kind of strikes me. He may know his business.
Yeah,
but the
does it play?
bedside manner.
Yeah. Well, I never thought I'd say this before. I'm glad you brought up tics, Bryan.
Oh.
Billy Eilish has pulled back the curtain on a very personal issue in a new interview with David Letterman on his Netflix show, talking at length about having Tourette's.
Oh.
She was first diagnosed with a condition at 11. She told Letterman that she loves answering questions about it because it's interesting, but she's also incredibly confused by it. She does admit that there's one way to go to get her to go silent on the topic if you start laughing, even if you're uncomfortable, whatever. She doesn't want to, be a part of that. But here's a clip of her talking about the tics she has with Letterman, and not as noticeable as the last clip we saw.
Do they dissipate for a period of time?
Yeah.
Do they remit?
Yeah, they sometimes. I mean, they don't ever I never don't tick at all, because the main tics that I do constantly all day long are I wiggle my ear back and forth and raise my eyebrow and click my jaw and do that and like flex my arm here and flex this arm and flex these muscles. These are things you would never notice if you're just having a conversation with me. But for me, they're very exhausting.
Wow.
Constantly working out.
Yeah.
Flexing.
Yeah.
Remember those ab machines where it's equivalent to 7,000 sit-ups?
Yep.
And this guy's watching TV while he straps the
This-
Abenizer
yeah, right.
to him.
How'd those work out?
Got a 9-volt battery hanging off a cord. But it's all about, pardon the pun, our wiring. You're like, equivalent to 9,000 sit-ups.
I'm
and
listening.
that guy's just watching Jeopardy. Oh, man.
I can't wait to get that sweet beach bod. I just tangentially related. You guys ever done, and if you haven't, you might be doing it soon, E-stim?
Oh, yeah.
The E-stim, they put electrodes on you, to activate your muscles. They did a lot for me in early physical therapy.
They do it after car
You might do it with
accidents.
your hand,
Yeah.
to kind of stimulate the muscles of your hand so you can get them working again.
I hated that thing.
They can turn it up to 11 and it hurts like shit.
It hurts.
It's like
and
your
really?
muscles being twisted.
It's exactly.
Stimulates them.
Yeah,
They put these electrodes on all over.
Ideally, you dial it into 5.5, and it kind of it activates your muscles. Whereas there's
it fucking sucks. I know people who love it. I guess you love the results from it. But when I would go in to do it after the car accident, that's when that dude kissed my back.
Mm-hmm.
I hated the feeling of it. I hated it. It didn't even hurt. It just gave me the heebie-jeebies. But yeah, you might have it.
Never done it.
If they crank it all the way, it feels like an extreme cramp.
Yes.
And is it that's the ab buster technology?
I imagine there's some
version of
crossover.
it.
Yeah, this is to stimulate muscles that are not responsive.
What happened to the thing where the lady just lays back on that thing and the little
rubber band?
The little rubber band shakes her butt back and forth.
That was like a 50s, 60s thing.
Oh, that was a full leather strap.
I want that.
That was a good one. I'll tell you the one that was ubiquitous. There's two pieces of exercise equipment that were ubiquitous when I was growing up, one of which did nothing like the butt shimmy strap. The other was a full-blown workout, and I don't think anyone ever used it the way it should have been used. But if you did, you would be shredded. The one was the twister. You just stood on top of this platform and just moved your arms and did the chubby checker. Like, it was just... It was like a relish go round at a smorgasbord or something.
Like a lazy Susan.
It was a lazy Susan. You just stood on it and you just twisted back and forth. And I don't even know what's called whammo twister or
your
something.
Your legs go one way or the other.
Well, they have those slide boards now. Do you have one?
No, but I don't know.
But you do that and it just slides in place. It looks like a skateboard
I have
almost.
the one with the cylinder in the middle of it.
Oh,
but
maybe
that's
a balance.
different.
No, you're just talking about almost ice skating side to side.
Right. Well, it's like I was doing it at Target. That's why I know it exists. And I saw it on Shark Tank.
The weird twister thing everyone had, and even my mom had one, and my mom also, I think, had this one, which would work the shit out of you, but nobody ever did it. That wheel with the two bike grips next to it. If you want to get down on your knees and go full extension and roll back up and roll back out again.
Obliques like a Greek god.
Yes. But
don't like it?
Nobody wanted that one. Those were the two. They're both $9. You could get them anywhere.
If you're not in shape already, you can't even do one.
No, I know.
I've tried.
I know, but there was that weird wheel.
Yep.
It was the same. It was a slightly larger wheel, but the same wheel you'd find on a push lawnmower, back in the day, or actually a power lawnmower, and then that weird twister. See if you can find what that thing is called, Max. I'll have a flashback. It's like 70s, 60s. Twister, exerciser, platform. It's essentially a 1 foot by 1 foot piece of wood with one of those ball bearing Lazy Susan things on it.
This is what I'm talking about. I guess it's called a fit board.
Oh,
and
you
stabilize it and you just twist as much as you can.
Yeah, the worst exercise ever. Bryan may remember this. Remember the rocking horse from football?
Is that this thing?
You lay on your face on the grass. Take your
pull
hands, pull them behind your back, kick your legs up, and rock.
You rock on your belly.
Is that how to get yourself out of a fucking...
No, it's how to torture yourself.
Prisoner of war?
Twist away was this thing, yeah. Is this from like the 70s? Oh, it's Jack LaLanne. Look at this guy. See what he has to say about this.
Twist away, twister for you.
Oh, she's in a dress.
She's wearing a onesie.
Look at this.
This is it.
She's firming her upper body here with the isometric cord. Now she's firming up the waist, the hips, the thigh, something to tone and firm and to exercise and condition practically all the 600 muscles in the body. Something that's so relaxing. What a therapy.
Relaxing.
You can do it in the morning, in the evening, and you don't have to disrobe, and everyone will love it.
In your
it's a game. You can have so much fun. How do you like it, Elaine?
Oh, it's lots of fun. Everybody should have one.
Okay, now let's talk about you and your Christmas shopping right now. If you want to buy one twist-away twister, it costs you $4.95. Now, that's a big saving, plus 50 cents to cover postage and handling. Now, as I said, what a wonderful gift. So, for every twister you get over two, it costs you $4 each, plus 50 cents to cover postage and handling. If you buy one, $4.95.
I miss Jack
LaLanne. You're making money.
Handling, two or more,
God
only
bless.
$4 each.
I know what
God
everyone's
bless
getting for
Jack.
Christmas.
I
Jack
want
LaLanne.
that. I think it looks like a great time.
I've been to the man's house.
Yeah.
God bless him. He was Jack LaLanne through and through to the very end. No sense of humor. I just went over there and made fun of him. Did
he know it?
I don't know what he knew. We had a great time. I spent the whole day with Jack LaLanne and Elaine LaLanne.
I love that.
His wife, who was in there. But
that was Elaine?
He said, "How's it feel, Elaine?"
I didn't even notice.
So that's Elaine LaLanne. She was there. He was there. He was probably 93 at the time, still in amazing shape. And it was a man show bit. Well, maybe we'll show it tomorrow or something. But he was fun, very sincere. But the thing about Jack that you have to give him this. He would always wear the jumpsuits. Always had the jumpsuit. And if you look at it, he not only wears a jumpsuit, but he wears those weird kind of gymnast ballerina slippers.
Mm-hmm.
If you show it, he's wearing ballerina slippers. Now, when guys are 5'5.5", they'll try to buy themselves an inch. Now, sometimes they go, full Bonaducci with a biker boot or something.
Or just put a lift in your shoe.
But they usually won't give it away.
Right.
He has 1/8 of an inch of fabric between his foot and the floor. He's a short dude, and he says, fuck y'all. I'm wearing ballerina shoes. What are those? Let me see it. Sorry, Max Bad. Don't ever wear those, by the way.
We're loading it back up.
We'll see him again, but and we will find you that man show bit
And
next
speaking
time.
of pitchmen, that Ron Popeil, Ronco hair is working for him. It is jet black.
He used to celebrate his birthday every year. Do you remember that big deal?
Mm-mm.
Oh, we'll do a dive on him tomorrow. His whole thing was.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Who?
Jack LaLanne. Okay. He's like, I'm celebrating my birthday, my 80th birthday. I'm swimming to Catalina. And I'm dragging a family of Puerto Ricans in a rowboat.
Oh boy!
When the rope's going to be in my mouth.
Oh my God!
And I'm swimming to Catalina. Wow. Like, you don't remember his crazy challenges?
No.
He is absolutely wearing ballet slippers.
Yes, and he's shorter than his wife, who's standing on a sit and spin.
Wow.
All right, sorry. You know what? For tomorrow, Max Spada, over here now. His birthday challenges were like crazy. It was always, I'm going into the harbor and I'm going to drag something with my teeth. They're crazy.
I'm not aware of these. Was this local?
Never heard of this.
Yeah,
it was right before our time.
Just 10 seconds. Just look up, Jack LaLanne's birthday challenges.
He pulled 70 boats on his 70th birthday.
What?
In the harbor, once again.
Is this going to be Vinny in 20 years?
Maybe 9 years.
I'm seeing push-up challenges and things like that. We'll pull one up.
He was his 80th birthday. I'm going to do 80 push-ups in under a minute. Like, that was his whole...
I love it. Where would this air?
It was kind of back when it'd
Things
be...
were just on.
What it would be is be in the newspaper and then local news. Fitness man, Jack LaLanne celebrates his birthday with a 2-minute roll-in bit.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Yeah, we're down at the Santa Monica Pier, and that's no dolphin. That's Jack LaLanne. His 75th birthday, tugging 200 people in a boat. Oh, wait, here he is.
Hugh Hazard must have been at these.
Yeah.
But he's used to challenges. Remember, this is the guy who swam across the San Francisco Bay. The one who at age 60 swam from Alcatraz Island, handcuffed and shackled, to Fisherman's Wharf, while towing a half-ton boat. Today, the task of towing 70 people on board 70 rowboats 1 mile on birthday number 70 in water between 60 and 70 degrees. A piece of cake, right?
I haven't eaten any of that stuff since I've been 15 years old. I was a full-blown sugarholic till I was 15 years old. I committed myself, and that was it.
Once again, he was handcuffed and shackled, moving at a half-mile-an-hour clip. It would be more than 2 hours before it would be all over. In between start and finish, cheers and encouragement from friends and his wife, Elaine.
What about his 71st birthday? Any more feats? Or is this it?
I hope not. Don't you get tired of this every other year?
Jack was a delight to live with.
I mean, he'd get out of the water and be like, I got to start training for 71. I'm going to juggle 71 orphans.
I can't scold him now. I couldn't do that. I love him too much.
Is this thing moving?
Go, Jack, go, his long
All right. Anyway, he was always a stunt. I don't know. He died at 96 or 7 or something. He didn't die that much longer after what year did he
He died in 2011.
Oh.
Wow.
Clean living.
Not in the middle of a stunt, I hope.
No. Yes, he celebrated his 99th birthday by staying in a coffin forever.
Being buried 6 feet.
91 of you are going to join me. Did you hear the pop? Shotgun pump.
Pulls a pin.
Pulls a pin on a grenade.
Yeah,
All right.
He was 96, died of pneumonia. According to his family, he was sick for a week but refused to see a doctor.
All right, we got to get into him and that man show bit tomorrow because there's a lot to unpeel about Jack LaLanne. All right, we bring it home?
Let's do it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina Grad. That was the news with Gina Grad.
Well, you can go to Denver to the TOS Con. That'll be June 23rd. I'll be speaking there. Use the code Carolla for 15% off. And Sonny will be with me, working, saying hi afterward. Then we head on off to Comedy Works South, June 24th and 25th. And Sonny will be working that merch table there and eating a little surf and turf in the back. We'll do some live stand-up there and some live pods there as well. You just go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows. You can pre-order my new book, Everything Reminds Me of Something. It'll be available July 19th. It's one of my better ones. I think you're going to laugh. I want to thank Marisa Randazzo. Randazzo. I screwed myself up. Marisa Randazzo, and she's also Marc Zimmerman for joining us and giving us some really interesting insights into their field of expertise. Until next time, it's Adam for Mark and Marisa and Gina and Bald saying Mahala. We're wired that way as human beings to kind of look the other way for many of the killings that just take place that are almost sadly routine nationally on a weekly and daily basis, and then something grabs our consciousness and everyone snaps into action, or at least attempts to snap into action.